DHS, a very controversial department right now because they're not letting any of the journalists in to take a look at the situation down there. The Biden White House does not seem to want any transparency. Mike, thank you for joining us to shed some light on this very opaque problem.
You got it. Thanks for having me.
So I'm told it's not a crisis and there's not a surge. Can we fact check that claim, please?
Yeah, pretty easily. So it's the worst it's probably ever been. I mean, by DHS's own admission, it's going to be the worst in 2 decades. But there's a couple factors that make it worse than just the total numbers. In Trump times, we weren't doing catch and release. So the apprehensions were people who were then, returned. We're on track this month for about 150,000 apprehensions, and we're going to set a one-year record. One of the major problems now is the sheer volume of unaccompanied minors coming in. Now, the media will tell you that largely comprises of small children. That's not true. These are mostly, 75% and above, 15, 16, 17-year-old workers, many of whom have gang ties. We have seen a lot of a gang usage of this what is known as the UAC program. And essentially what the Biden administration is doing is turning our southern border into kind of an Amazon Prime situation where they want to hold on no longer than 2 days and get them wherever they want in the country. So they view the crisis as one of DHS capacity and how quickly they can get illegal aliens in the country, not as stopping the throughput. They aren't concerned with the sheer volume coming in. They're concerned with getting them into the interior and out of the prying eyes of the media who can see them in these overcrowded facilities right now.
Because I'm old enough to remember on the campaign trail, President Biden encouraged illegal aliens to come in. And of course, the Democrats have focused on this unaccompanied minors issue to create the impression that it's all, sweet little 4-year-old children fleeing some political persecution. And as you described, that's not really the case. But it's so interesting the way you put it, because you'll hear Democrats say, well, the numbers, maybe they're a little higher now, but look, surges happen, and this happened under Trump. But the issue is, what happens to the foreign nationals after they get here? Do they go home or do they go into our country?
Right. You're absolutely right. And another key distinction is that in 2019, when Trump had the crisis, it was largely a result of non-organically occurring caravans. I'm saying groups of people that were organized by other folks. You had mass political influence in these. You had encouragement, the use of kind of, Facebook, Telegram, whatnot. There's a whole system across, coming up to the border where checkpoints and everything were set up. And so these are people who were encouraged because they thought it had, could impact the 2020 election, that it could impact current in-country politics in those countries. That's totally, and then what Trump did, and he responded by shutting it down, okay? And so here we have basically the exact opposite. We have a much bigger surge to the border. That surge is created because Biden has turned off all the Trump enforcement things, and that is well known south of the border. He has incited this mass crisis, this surge. And then finally, like you just said, we're not sending them all back. And so the smugglers and the cartels know that their business is still running. Nothing Joe Biden or his administration has done is greeted poorly by the cartels. They now know that their prime business model is just a matter of getting as many under 18 in as possible. And they'll tell you that they're sending families and single adults home. That is not categorically true whatsoever. A lot of them are still getting released in. And then don't even get me started on the amount of people who aren't even counted in any of these numbers because they get away. They're called getaways. This is in the tens of thousands. When we're surging all of our Border Patrol officers to deal with basically, childcare at these facilities, guess what else we're doing? We're leaving the rest of the border wide open. The cartels know this, and they're smart. They pick their spots. They go where officers and agents aren't, and that's where they run drug through. And they're having a field day. They're making tons of money hand over fist. And if you're the cartels, this is the best possible administration you can have because they're not going to shut it down. They're not going to secure it. They're going to leave these wide openings for drugs to go through. And then they're going to serve as the final step in a human trafficking network by taking receipt of these under 18 populations and even a lot of the family and single adults.
There was a trafficker who was interviewed on Univision just this week. And you either laugh or cry at this. It was so ridiculous. The guy's being interviewed and he said, business is booming right now. And this president is creating a lot of incentives. So we're bringing people over and it's great. Business is going very well. The president of Mexico has blamed Joe Biden for what's going on right now. You've got illegal aliens who have been interviewed on other outlets who say, even Martha Raddatz, who is generally a left-wing journalist, but got an illegal alien on record to say, yeah, we know that Biden's going to give us goodies, so we're coming over there now. We know that this issue is very hot in terms of the public consciousness. We know that the majority of Americans do not want an open border. The majority of Americans, according to many surveys, want to drastically reduce the number of immigrants, legal and illegal, for that matter. So why is there nothing to be done here? I think a lot of Americans are pulling their hair out saying, all the people, even the foreign governments are saying, stop this, stop this, stop this. Why is it permitted to go on?
That's a great question, and it's part of the reason why Biden just threw it on Kamala Harris's plate. It's because it's politically absolutely toxic. And I was talking about this yesterday. For him to fix it would be very easy. I mean, for heaven's sake, he created it. But to do so would be politically near impossible for him because it involves an absolute recognition that undoing all the Trump stuff wasn't a good idea, that maybe some of the things that President Trump had set up were working. And so what they're trying to do is not undo any of the things that they've done to cause this. What their end game here is just to create enough capacity, facilities, and organizations to do what I said before, turn into an Amazon Prime situation, where they just are in the facilities for a short period of time. They got somewhere lined up for them to go, and they're getting them out of there as fast as possible. That's victory for the left here. It's not to shut down the overall increase in coming in. So we're seeing them go crazy trying to lease office space, building space, involve different entities. They're surging unrelated DHS components down to the border. And they're all doing this to set up that kind of Amazon Prime network. And frankly, it's despicable because we're just going to see the numbers rise and rise and rise. And it's just terrible news for the home countries. It does El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, et cetera, no good when we're importing their entire working age class. These economies are not going to get better just by the Biden administration sending billions and billions of dollars down there to be funneled through NGOs and corrupt governments. What they need is their working age population to stay in country, create business, invest, have children, build a country. And we're not helping them. We're doing long-term damage through what, frankly, is almost a colonial type policy where we're just taking them of their best resources, their workers, and leaving them to wither.
That is a great point that I had not considered because, the way that the left defends open borders and all these policies is in the name of humanitarianism and compassion. And so you can look at what's happening on the border and say, hold on, you're creating incentives for a system where, according to one study by Fusion and Huffington Post, 60 to 80% of women and girls who cross that border illegally are sexually assaulted along the journey. That doesn't sound very compassionate, where kids are being brutalized, physically brutalized by these cartels. That doesn't sound very compassionate, where the people of the United States don't get to have their laws enforced, don't get a say in their own country. That doesn't seem compassionate. But you bring this broader point up, which is, what about the home countries? What about Ecuador? What about Guatemala? What about Nicaragua? What about Honduras? These are countries now that are losing their most precious resource, namely their most ambitious people. So the problem is only ever going to get worse.
You're absolutely right. And their only solution for it on the left is to send more money down. That's not what we need to be doing. I mean, we're talking about a time in America where our own people have been told that resources are so scarce that we need to mail checks to people to stay home. How are we going to open our borders? And, you're seeing private tutors at these facilities, healthcare, Medicare, every tool that we, can offer that we're told on our home end is in such short supply that we're needing massive amounts of stimulus out of the federal government. It costs about $15,000 to educate a child in the United States on average. Think about this. We're projected for at least 120,000 under 18. That's about the under 18 population of DC. So we're basically importing a city's worth of under 18. Wow. And we're going to have to educate them. We're going to have to provide medical care. All of the public safety and resources drained. Meanwhile, we're telling our people, you need to quibble about these checks that are going out because things are so bad that we have to surge resources in this historic way. It makes no sense to have this domestic policy and then what truly is, a foreign and political policy for them when it comes to immigration and open borders.
Oh, that's another wild aspect of this whole thing is, we're told we can't leave our homes. We can't go to church. We can't go to Christmas dinner because then we might see our loved ones and we're not allowed to do that. Meanwhile, the border is flung open. And I saw some reports that, and actually, I suppose the DHS secretary right now, Mayorkas, just tacitly admitted that people are getting through who have not been tested for coronavirus.
Right. And there's only one way to stop that. That's to stop letting people in. I mean, they're trying to stand up a what is honestly a whole of government approach to COVID testing, a record surge of people crossing the border, while at the same time we're doing this Herculean effort to get everyone in the country vaccinated. It makes no sense. They're never going to be able to get perfect, COVID safety. Let's be honest. Letting anyone in the country during this times for, these illegal reasons is not helpful for COVID. That's just more vectors for possible spread. So even if you vaccinate them at the front end, that doesn't mean the COVID consequence is gone. But Secretary Mayorkas misled Congress when he testified a couple weeks ago and said that they were all getting tested. That's not true. We've seen the hundreds who have popped positive, and that's just the ones we are testing. There's no safe way to do illegal immigration in the middle of a pandemic. That's why when Trump applied what's called Title 42, which was a public health justification, Biden's whittled it down. And look at this. Before this crisis started manifesting itself, and it was already on the way up, but it didn't reach crisis time for them yet, they were talking about getting rid of Title 42 across the board. That means everyone comes in absent any COVID concerns.
Wow.
Watch for this. They're going to do it. Once they build up this capacity I'm talking about, where they can process people faster and maybe the public messaging against them kind of tamps down a bit, they're going to get rid of Title 42 across the board. That means for adults and family units, no COVID justification, just come on in.
I thought that the future on this issue could not possibly look bleaker. And Mike, you have convinced me that it can. But I appreciate it. You've really shed a lot of light on this. We've got to take a quick break. But Mike Howell, where can people find you?
At heritage.org or on M. Howell Tweets on Twitter.
Follow Mike on Twitter. Follow him at Heritage because it's one thing to focus on what's going on right now, but actually the left, the Democrats have a lot more shenanigans planned for the future. Mike, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Did you know that every like on this video creates one additional leftist tier? Don't ask me why. That's called science. To take advantage of this amazing opportunity, hit the like button.